Hello, I'm Pattie Bullard. I'm the owner and designer of Weber's Tools, and I'm very excited to be here at Jewel School today to introduce you to a line of hammers that we've come out with. These are beautiful little hammers. They're specially designed. The handle is made out of white oak, and it's just as smooth as can be. And you'll notice that it's got a curve here. It encourages you to have the correct grip. If you have your finger up when you hammer, it can stress your arm and it goes all the way up your arm. You can feel it. But if you hold your hammer like this very lightly and let the hammer do the work for you, then you save a lot of wear and tear on your arm. Now, I'm going to show you, this is the planishing hammer, and you'll notice that it's polished. Also, see this little silver thing here? That is a pin that holds the hammer head tight. Also, what's really unusual about our hammers is they offer a lifetime guarantee. We say you buy Weber's once, you've got them for a lifetime. So if you wear out your hammer, then you can have it replaced. Now, this one is called the planishing hammer, and I use it a lot for flattening, and you can also use the edge of it to get some texture. Like I could come in like this and get little curves, but what I really love about this hammer is I like to flatten things like a wire when I'm working with wire, or I turn it over and I can put an edge on my metal. And what I'm doing is I'm rolling that little edge over and putting a hammered kind of texture on it, and it makes it look very finished, and it has a really nice finesse to it. And I do this with almost all of the jewelry that I make. You can see over here, I have this bracelet, and I rolled the edges under so that it makes it look very finished. People a lot of times don't even realize that I've used wire to make some of my designs because of how finished the edges look. You can see how those edges roll over very nicely. Gives it a sophisticated finish. Also, you can see the texture there is made with the large dimple on this hammer. Now that's the first hammer I wanted to show you. Here's the second one. This one, a lot of people call it a raising hammer, but I like to use it for texture, and I'll show you what it can do. You can it has a fatter end and a thinner end, and think texture. A lot of times with texture hammers, you don't want a perfect impression. You want a texture, which is a little irregular, and I can take and just hammer. This is the narrow end, and you can see that texture there. If I hammered with the larger end, I would get bigger divots in my metal. Now, I'm going to show you this little hammer here. I love this hammer. You can get nice little dimples in your metal. This is a smaller end and a larger end, and you'll notice all of our hammers have two different sizes of heads or two different shapes of heads, which makes them very versatile. Now, I can put small divots, and you can see those small divots. And notice I'm tapping when I hammer. I'm not banging. You want a light touch for several reasons. You don't want to distort your metal. You want it to have texture without being thin and rumply and a mess. So now I'm going to use the larger end. And let me show you the difference. You can see those are larger, the other is smaller. Now, the beautiful thing about texture hammers is this hammer doesn't have just one texture. I can mix the textures. I can come over the large dimples with the small, and over the small with the big. And I've created a new texture there, small and big together. Then I'm going to introduce you to another hammer that we call the sharps. This one here, you can see it has one end that's pretty sharp and one end that's very sharp. And what I like to do with this hammer, I'm going to show you on this how I can layer, and then I'll show you what it does by itself. But I can come in and put a linear pattern on top of this one. And it's usually a pretty good idea to hold your metal off the side of your block. Instead of doing what I was doing, I might hit my fingers. If I'm being smart, I'm going to hold it over here. Now you can see that texture is even richer. When you think about the different textures you can get using all these hammers, it's amazing. I'll use a little bit wider end now, and I'll make a texture on this square. Let me do a little bit more. Now you can see I have a nice linear texture. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to flip it over and use the other end and put an edge on here. I've got it on 3 sides, you can see it there. And you can see how when you crisscross, I can make a crosshatch pattern over in this corner here. You can kind of see where they crossed. So in the middle of my metal, I could actually come back and make a crosshatch pattern. But you can see the possibilities with this hammer here. The next hammer I want to show you is our small dimple hammer. Now, we had the planishing hammer has a large curved head. This hammer here has 2 more curves. And finally, this hammer has little tiny heads that make little tiny divots. And you can see that's kind of flat right there. That'll make a nice divot, and this end does too. It's a little bit smoother, so you get a really fine one. Now, if I take my metal, and I'll do the large one first. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the small one, and I'll show you the results. The differences are kind of subtle, but you can still see them. Now this is where if I wanted to put a border on this to make it look really nice and to have the finesse I like to add, I could come in and do this. But it's a little hard to aim right there, so a lot of times I'll come back with either this one or the larger head of the other one to put a beautiful border on. Adding a faceted edge, which gives it just that nice finesse I like to talk about when you're making jewelry. It's the little details that can make all the difference in the world when you sell your jewelry and also when you give it for gifts. I'm so happy I've had the chance today to introduce you to the new Weber's line of hammers, and I really appreciate you spending the time to learn about them. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.